lives his life, he's living it fast. Don't try to hide when the dice have been cast. He rides the whirlwind.
Alright, so I'm going to cover yet another Blu-ray. I'm on a roll here, man. I told you the Blue review is back, so, you know, I wasn't fucking around. Back and badder than ever. Anyway, I just got off work at my day job, though this was a second shift today. Oh, I haven't listed this guy yet on eBay, but I'm going to start out with $75. I know I won't get that much. If any of y'all are interested, this is a beautiful Frankenstein bust. Till then, he's just going to be a mascot for my videos. So, let's talk about a movie that Blue Santa gave me. The reindeer dropped it down the chimney. I don't even have a fucking chimney. But I'm sorry about the cough drop. You know, I got real sick with COVID and colds and everything last month. So I'm trying to keep my throat lubricated. I don't want to lose my voice again. So anyway, I was gifted with three incredible Blu-rays. It was like dream come true time. And from what I understand, they were all obtained very cheaply. If you look in my community page on this channel, you'll see, you know, around Christmas time, you'll see a picture of all three of them. And this one is, well, I don't know if it was the centerpiece in my picture, but it damn well should have been. This is Massacre at Central High. Yes. I believe this is 1975, 76, yes. Directed by this guy named, and written by Rene Daalder. Apparently he was like a Dutch guy, and I guess he still is a Dutch guy. But he knew a lot of the Dutch film scene people. Like he knew Paul Verhoeven and Rutger Hauer and those cats. But he didn't, you know, they started out doing the art housey kind of films, really adult art housey kind of, I'm not mean porn, but you know, but pretty graphic at times. Turkish Delight, which I think is just an awesome movie. Before Verhoeven went to Hollywood and did like RoboCop and Starship Troopers and Basic Instinct and stuff. As before Howard did Blade Runner, you know, became well known. So anyway, Rene Daalder, and I believe also the cinematographer for this film. Yes, Bert van Munster. Bert van Munster. He was a buddy too from I guess the Netherlands. So I gleaned some of this information from the incredible audio commentaries on here. I'm going to talk about the extras and trivia and all that other stuff in a little bit. First, I just want to get you acquainted with this Blu-ray release. This is, I wish they'd done something more colorful. This is really just the generic kind of VHS cover that was in vogue, and also the bootleg DVDs, because this was never released officially on DVD in America, you know, North America anyway. Here's the back, and this is done by Synapse. Synapse was one of the kings of the hill in the early 2000s as far as genre film releases on DVD. They were important, and then they kind of faded and waned in and out. You know, one of the partners died. That didn't help, and eventually they were able to do a semi-definitive, yeah, probably definitive, unless you want to get into 4K UHD releases. I'm not going there yet. I probably never will. I just can't afford to do all this. I'm content with 4K Blu-rays. That's fine. Anyway, the release I was talking about was Suspiria. This guy named Vincent Pereira, I've known him for years on Facebook. I'm not going to call him a friend. We get along. Sometimes we've had words. But, you know, he's the Vincent Pereira who was the good friend of Kevin Smith and made cameos in some of his movies. I think he was called the Viewist Universe historian for a while. He did some really nice, he had some really nice repartee with Kevin on the audio commentaries on the Viewist Universe DVDs. I missed that, Kevin Smith. I still haven't watched Clerks 3. It's in my docket for streaming, and we'll talk about it on here after I see it. Vincent appears in that one too. So Vincent is a very knowledgeable and very opinionated film scholar, and he did a lot of work with Don May Jr. on that Suspiria Blu-ray, and I think it kind of helped put. I think it helped put Synapse back on the map. So they've been gradually releasing some of the stuff they had on DVD onto Blu-ray, but really more acquiring a lot of new, not a lot, but I don't know, a fair amount of newer stuff, because they have certain titles that they let go of, like Thriller or A Cruel Picture, which they released on DVD. And now that was sucked up by two different companies. The one that I reviewed, I can't remember the company. I'm perfectly fine with the one I have that I reviewed on this channel, but you know, then Vinegar Syndrome got a hold of it and did another like super duper deluxe one. I'm not gonna bother to upgrade. There's several that are missing in action on Synapse. I mean, you know, one notable one is Singapore Sling. When is that coming out on Blu-ray? Do they have the rights to put it on Blu-ray? But it was nice. They snapped some of the Argento stuff away from Blue Underground. So they have 10. I'm pretty sure they put out Tenebrae on Blu-ray. Maybe Phenomena. Anyway, this one was sought out for years. You know, apparently it was got very popular in the 80s and 90s, being rented. With the same kind of boring cover. So it says on the back, a considerable filmmaking achievement, intelligent and uncompromising, says Roger Ebert. Sneak previews. So, Massacre at Central High was one of the first kind of slashers. It doesn't have much of any slashing going on, but it was one of the first to have kind of a set of serial murders of young people doing young people things, and you not knowing who the killer is exactly. Though in this one, they tip the hand fairly early, but so that's important too. Like 1974, I believe, was Black Christmas, which is generally regarded as the first full-out slasher. The proto-slasher that kind of was the gateway from giallo into Italian giallos into American slashers was undoubtedly Mario Bava's 1971 A Bay of Blood, or Ecology of Terror, or Carnage, or Twitch of the Death Nerve. It has a lot of titles. A Bay of Blood is the generally settled upon title now. Bay of Blood has tons of tropes. I mean, Bava went crazy in that one. And a ton of tropes that ended up being used all through the slasher genre. Some of his stuff, some of the shots in there are plagiarized directly. I mean, there's a direct connection between A Bay of Blood and the Friday the 13th series. And I love telling this kind of anecdotes, but I don't really want to get that far off track right now, so maybe another time. What Massacre at Central High brought to the table was, Daalder and van Munster were, looking to get something together, hanging out in America, and they did casting calls, for any young actors they could find, and the cast is really amazing. They're basically all like people in their early 20s playing 17-year-olds, but a couple of them were pretty young. I'm going to read you this account on the back just so I can get the plot out of the way and talk about the cast. Then I will talk about my feelings about the movie and Blu-ray. Okay. When new student David, played by Maury, who is not a well-known actor, he's the star of the movie, but he's the lesser known among the cast. When David arrives at Central High, he discovers that it is lorded over by a gang of bullies who rule the school through intimidation and violence. David's friend Mark, played by Andrew Stevens of The Fury, encourages him to join this dominant clique. But instead, David stands up for their victims, and the gang cripples him in retaliation. Soon, David begins taking steps to end their reign of terror permanently, setting in motion an explosive cycle of killing that may not end until no one is left to graduate. Co-starring Robert Carradine, Revenge of the Nerds, Kimberly Beck, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, and Rainbow Smith, Lemora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural. Massacre at Central High is the startling American debut of Dutch writer-director Rene Daalder. While packing in all the sex and violence that drive an audience's demand, Daalder also delivers a potent allegory about fascism and power structures in a high school world where adults are absent. A cult and critical favorite since its 1976 release, and an evident influence on the classic Heathers. Massacre at Central High is now available on Blu-ray, so you can study Daalder's classic like never before and educate yourself. Get an educate at Central High with all new special features. So, yeah. I had just thought it was a generic slasher when I was young, so I didn't really try to find anything about it, or pursue watching it. Then I read the Phil Hardy Encyclopedia of Horror, of that edition, specifically the Overlook edition, not the All-Room earlier edition or the later editions. I still have it. It's this giant black hardcover book. I don't have it on the slipcover anymore. Dust jacket. It's been very well read, but it's still, isn't falling apart. But it lumps Heather in with the horror genre, and it's basically a chronological a set of essays about pretty much all horror movies from all over the world that they could squeeze in there, starting in the beginning all the way up to the present, which at the time of that book was like 1992 or 3, I think. But they have an entry for Heathers, and that one, they claim they say it's a remake of Massacre at Central High. I wouldn't say it's a remake, but it's a remodel. It's a reimagining. No, I mean it's a quasi remake. Basically they flipped the gender of the gang, and they changed the personality of the main character, updated him, or try to make him like cooler, hipper, and then they contrive well, I don't want to say contrive, but they create a love story. Daniel Waters wrote Heathers, by the way. Waters creates a love story, almost Romeo and Juliet-esque, between JD, the guy who's getting revenge on the clique of popular kids, and getting violent in doing so, and he's dating one of the girls in the clique. They're the Heathers. They're all first name Heather. And I've never reviewed Heathers on this channel, by the way. I have the Blu-ray. I love that movie. But yeah, so there's definitely some differences. There's twists on it. But the idea of, you know, uh, these guys who run the school through intimidation and have these very strict standards and look down on nerds and people like that that they think are dorks and like to beat them up. And then the one guy, the loner, who's like the new kid at the school, he ends up deciding that they need to be wiped out. And then by the end, you know, the it was the Revenge of the Nerds, long before the movie Revenge of the Nerds. But Demon Head Robert Carradine, basically they, you know, it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss thing. So they're starting to become, you know, have their own kind of elitist standards and about who fits in, who deserves to be part of what they're doing, and they're going to try to, capitalize on the serial deaths of these boorish jock assholes who are running the show. And Heather's, like I said, is gender swapped, so it's these kind of very 80s preppy girls, and they're kind of like what would now be called mean girls, and they torment everybody. And once a few of them die, one of them, played by a young, what's her name? Shannon Doherty from Beverly Hills 90210 and Mallrats, etc. Charmed. Shannon Doherty, I think this was her first major role, Heather's. She declares herself like the queen. And then things kind of get kind of sour, and, you know, but eventually everything is, you know, it's like a free for all. And, you know, ends in an explosive, literally explosive climax where, you know, JD has had these explosives strapped to himself, and he and Veronica Sawyer, his girlfriend, played by Winona Ryder, that's the aforementioned one of the Heathers that, you know, dares to mingle with him, much less make out with him. Yeah, they have a really fucked up love story by the end, and she rebels against him as he becomes increasingly psychotic, and Christian Slater, the actor, descends further and further into a Jack Nicholson fugue state of imitation. So, but yeah, explosion. That's kind of what ends, and she's trying to stop the school from blowing up. Okay, Massacre High ends in a similar arc, and but David, you know, at the last minute decides he's going to try to stop the explosion because somebody he really likes is going to die. One of the only people he likes, played by Kimberly Beck, and but, you know, they fucked him up earlier. They crippled him, so he's just limping and hobbling along and trying to run with the bomb, and boom, it's too late. So, yeah, the basic structure, the basic message of Massacre at Central High, the very essence is exactly and well translated into Heather's. The soul is there. Is there such a thing as a soul remake, a spiritual remake? I have heard people say that before. I'm going to use that from now. So yeah, let's run through the basic plot again real quick, flesh it out. So David's new to the school, and he's you know, he's got one friend there, played by Andrew Stevens. So, and this is also talk about the cast here. Andrew Stevens was the son of actress Stella Stevens, who was like a sex symbol in the 60s and 70s. Apparently, she had him at an incredibly young age. There's an audio commentary. There's several great audio commentary interviews on here. conducted by this cat named Mike White from the Projection Booth podcast, and I believe he has worked on the Projection Booth and other podcasts with my friend Heather Drain. I've just never crossed paths directly with Mike White. He interviews Andrew Stevens, Robert Carradine, Daryl Maury, and Rex Stevens Sykes. There's an audio interview with Rene Daalder, making of, and all kinds of other stuff, trailers, TV spots. Really a fun release. Really a necessary, mandatory, essential release for Synapse of a classic horror film that was almost lost. I'm going all over the map. I don't care. What I'm trying to say is, David's new to the school. He's got one buddy, Mark, played by Andrew Stevens. Andrew Stevens doesn't care about this movie. He doesn't understand why anyone still likes it in the interviews and the commentary. He is known for doing The Fury by Brian De Palma after this, which I think is quite a good movie in my opinion. And but he was on a lot of television when I was a kid, a lot, and I saw him in a lot of TV movies and stuff. And he had kind of this hunky kind of 70s, thing with like the tight flannel shirt and the feathered hair down here, and which those kind of looks that kind of dominate this film. It was a very 1976 film. But the problem is, David is squeamish. The other guys who are just complete ass fucks. They're played by who are these guys? Ray Underwood, Steve Bond, Steve Silks. Steve Bond is one of them. Now, Steve Bond, about 10 years later, came to a little under 10 years later, maybe 7 or 8 years later, came to prominence as the character Jimmy Lee Holt on the soap opera General Hospital during one of its arguably high creative peaks. He was the illegitimate son of magnate Edward Quatermain and the half-brother of Dr. Alan Quatermain. Yeah, Quatermain. Yes, named after Alan Quatermain. The character in the pulp novels is Alan Quatermain, Quat. They added an R for General Hospital as Quatermain. So, and Alan Quatermain also was, of course, along with Mina Murray, the central protagonist of Alan Moore's comic book series, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And in the film version, he's played very well by Sean Connery. Not everything is well about that movie adaptation. So it's like, yeah. Steve Bond, yes, he was on General Hospital as Jimmy Lee Holt. My mind went, whew, and I'm just not going to bother to try to edit it out. Frankie is pretty grim here. You see my cat back there, Kal-El, hamming it up. I'm really glad to be back. I'm glad to be talking with you guys. I know this is very informal. It's kind of like some of my earlier videos that was like this, off the cuff, but I feel calm. I feel like I'm delivering the information well, and I'm not rushed and totally scattered, anxiety ridden. I don't know how my Lose video turned out. I only watched a little of it. I think it turned out okay. I had high hopes for this one, but now I'm going off on these insane tangents again. Well, the bottom line is these bullies they get really out of line and mean to some of the guys, especially this kid played by Robert Carradine, who's kind of a nerd, but he's also kind of a I don't want to say hippie, but kind of a anti-establishment kind of kid, rebel. And Mark has a girlfriend, played by Kimberly Beck. Kimberly, this was the first kind of Kimberly Beck outing. she was in some other films, like the Friday the 13th episode that they mention here as part of her credits. But again, I knew her from, as with Steve Bond, I knew her from soap operas. Um, she was the original, I can't remember the name of the character, but there was a heroine in this soap opera called Capital in the 1980s that was set in the Capitol and was set in Washington, D.C., and all this intrigue with, congressmen and shit. And one of the characters was kind of this, I think he was like some kind of soldier or something, named Tyler McCandless. And his grandfather was Judge Tyler, and played by the great Rory Calhoun, who not long before doing Capital played in Motel Hell. But Calhoun had been around for ages. I mean, my mom and dad were both shocked when Motel Hell came out. They're like, "It's Roy Calhoun." Then my mom was, "Oh, he's in Capital. He's cool." And who played his daughter, Clarissa McCandless. Yeah, that's her married name, Clarissa Tyler McCandless. Played by Constance Towers, who was in several Sam Fuller films. I believe she's in Shot Corridor and the other big one of his during that period that Criterion put out. My brain's going blank. Naked Kiss, maybe. She ended her career. She's retired now. She's in her maybe mid-80s or late older. She ended her career for the last 20 years of it playing the deviously evil Helena Cassadine on General Hospital, and she was absolutely amazing in that role. A role which was originated, by the way, by Elizabeth Taylor, of all people. Anyway, Kimberly Beck played in Capital, so she was engaged to Tyler McCandless, so Constance Towers was her mother-in-law, and Rory Calhoun was her granddad-in-law. And she was like I thought at the time she was strikingly beautiful and kind of different. Her teeth were kind of not perfect, and I kind of liked that as a contrast to like a beautiful woman. And, like Vanessa Paradis or Beatrice Dahl or something like that. But I mean, that's a big thing in France. Maybe the dental industry is not very good there. But anyway, so I did Kimberly Beck, and then she ended up quitting the show, and it got recast with this actress Catherine Hicks, and she was okay. But I don't know what happened to Kimberly Beck after that. But before Capital, she, like Steve Bond, before their ignominious soap opera careers, played in this film as the female lead, and she's Mark's girlfriend, and she feels bad for David. She empathizes with David. She doesn't like the bullies that Mark hangs out with. And Mark is like on the fence, man. He's a fence sitter. He's I gotta be with the popular guys. And he's like, "Come on, David, you gotta toughen up, man. You're gonna ruin it for both of us." And like, Mark, quit fucking whining, dude. And finally, not Mark, but the other three goons, they cripple him. He's David's working on a car, and he's underneath it, and it's jacked up, and he tells them to leave him alone. They're just being goofy, and they knock that jack loose, and boom, one of his legs gets really fucked up. I guess joint, a knee, and some of the bones are broken. So he recovers, but he has this big time limp. And so now they, make fun of him for some other reason. And of course, this seals his fate that he's not one of the dudes who are running the show at Central High. And he's also falling in love with Mark's girlfriend. And she likes him. First she likes him as in sympathizes with him, maybe feels sorry for him. But in time they become good friends, and she advocates for David at Mark and against the bully motherfuckers. And you don't see a lot of adults, by the way, in this. This is another Charlie Brown thing. The adults all go womp 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 womp, and you don't see them except fleetingly. I think that's cool. It's like chaos, anarchy, you know. It's like, you know, I don't know. It's not like Larry Clark. Larry Clark is like this idea taken to the absolute, you know, nth degree, the you know, the most graphic, nihilistic view of these unsupervised hellion kids. Um, but, you know, I like Larry Clark's work, by the way. I'm just going to say it right out. So if you hate me from now, I'm sorry. I already did a video on kids. I mean, not on kids. Bully, which I think is his masterpiece. But it's kind of like that. Yeah, there's the adults aren't characters of note. There's no like stern teacher advising them or interfering against the bullies. Or there's a lot of that in Heathers. There's a lot of that in Heathers. But that's not in Central High. Central High is like a hermetic thing where you just see the students and it just has a great feeling. It's almost claustrophobic though. I mean, in that there's like the big clique and these macho dudes, and then there's like the nerd gang, and of course there's a couple of girls who kind of are you know, right on the edge of the nerd gang, and one is played by Lani O'Grady. And Lani O'Grady was an actress my mom liked, and again, somebody notable in early role. I should have researched this. I think she's mainly known for being in a television series from the late 70s. I want to say it's Eight Is Enough, but I could be wrong about that. I know my mom liked her. I think I had kind of a crush on her when I was like the 4th grade. So she's in this. She's very entertaining. She's like best friends with Kimberly Beck. So finally, David, and the character's name I can't remember. Maybe Kimberly Beck. Oh, look at this, man. Look at this inside. This is a badass image right here. Look at David, man. He's like ready for fucking revenge. This is a Synapse catalog. So finally they have sex, and it's a pretty hot scene, and there's full nudity in this, and so Kimberly Beck, you know, if I wondered in passing while watching that soap opera as a kid, what Kimberly Beck might look like in the buff, I now know. I know it all, and I was very pleased by it. Um, so yeah, no, but it's not done super exploitatively. I mean, there's like a love scene with Mark where she's kind of naked, and there's a love scene with David while she's kind of really naked, and oh, they're both well done though. I mean, those are both in the context of a loving situation, and they're not like overboard, you know, and they're not like, you know, grunting and rooting like pigs, you know. But it's I don't know. I get spoiled by European genre movies of that period. So you watch an American one, you know, they're so crude in comparison. I don't mean like, I'm not talking about production values or budget or anything like that, but I just mean, well, okay, production values, yes, I am kind of talking about that. The European exploitation films were just vastly more well made. And then Japanese, I mean, good lord. Okay, that's the whole other level of craftsmanship. I've made this point before. But I love these scrappy, rugged, dirty fucking movies like, you know, that are popping up in these, you know, American Horror Project sets. And, you know, of course, this movie and countless other crazy ones, you know. I mean, of course, the King Daddy, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And they're not all horror. You know, some of these movies I'm talking about are just other exploitation American films, but they're very American. But they're, you know, they're of their time, and yet they're timeless. So David basically one by one sabotages different things that these bullies are doing, and they die brutal, horrible deaths. I've been waiting a long time to get right to that. That's the crux of it. But you still like David. And David is kind of, you know, he's kind of ambiguous. He's conflicted, you know, because it's where he he can't deal with his feelings for the young lady, and I'm pretty sure he kills Mark, and things are just south now between him and the girl. But see, there is the angle of him and the girl. There's the angle of the semi-popular girl and the outsider. So yes, I kind of misspoke earlier when I said that element was added to Heathers. No, that element was in the source material, the original, the one and only Massacre Central High. But it again, it is, carried over into the spiritual remake called Heathers. So I already talked about the explosion. It all ends badly, but it's just, there's drama, there's a little humor, there's some, unintentional cheese in camp because of the era, and the trappings of the era. I think overall, though, it's a pretty dead-on, serious movie that's got a lot to say, and it says it in a powerful fashion. And I think the anger that a character like David carries around, nowadays, I think if this movie were like, say, remade, David would be like considered like a Columbine shooter or something, and a lot of the guys that I watch videos about, true crime videos about on YouTube, I don't know if you get away with portraying him as totally sympathetic or the anti-hero. JD and Heathers, he's very sympathetic until near the end, then I think he becomes unsympathetic. I don't think David ever really becomes unsympathetic, because JD really is committed to blowing the fuck out of that school, even if he has to kill Veronica. But our man David here, he has some pangs of conscience, because the kids who are now inheriting the school after the deaths of the bullies, they're seeing David as like their leader, their spiritual advisor, and he's very uncomfortable in this role. They don't know he killed these people, right? And of course, Kimberly figures it out. So there's an ambiguity and a guilt and a weird set of feelings, and I think they're not delved into deeply in dialogue, but I think young Derry, is named Derry Maury, his acting and Daalder's direction, really, you really feel it. It's a really great performance, and this is one of those movies that, because it was a genre film at the time, it had these exploitative elements, and it was lower budget, and it had this kind of generic, sensationalistic title, which implies that it's far gorier than it really is. I mean, it is definitely got some violence and some crazy fucking death shots, but it's not like this over-the-top orgy of, it's not like an Unearthed film or anything, I mean, the company Unearthed Films, not a film that's been unearthed. And I don't know, I love it. Love it. I'm so happy to have it. I'm gonna hug it. So this, I heard, is going out of print. I don't know. It's really expensive, brand new on Amazon. But Blue Santa managed to snag it on eBay for a really, really low price. And I'm so happy. I've been waiting so long for this to come out. Good friend of mine, former unfortunately good friend of mine, Michael, he introduced me to this one. He introduced me to so many great movies and bands. Always in his debt for that, no matter what else is, water has gone under that aforementioned proverbial bridge. But anyway, this was one of his favorites too. First time I watched it with him. So. And my old buddy / collaborator, who again I'm not really in touch with him anymore either, the Marksman. I believe he was also a big fan of this movie. So check it out if you haven't seen it. I don't think it's on any of the streaming services though. Shudder should get it. I think it might just be a matter of time, because they do have some Synapse titles. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm trying to keep these videos under 45 minutes now. at least the blue reviews. I mean, stuff where I'm going on and on about personal stuff and politics and Flickr Street. They might be longer, but I'm trying to, you know, peel these back. So thanks for listening. That's another review in the can, and thank you. Frankie has been very pleased by your presence, and so is my mischievous cat over there. Thank you all. I love you all. Please like, please subscribe, share if you want to, you know, in some appropriate groups all over social media, Twitter, you know, wherever, TikTok,